Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome from whenever and wherever you are coming to Couchbase Connect online from. This is connecting to Couchbase from anywhere using CData Couchbase connectors, SQL access for Nickel and SQL++. My name is Jared Johnson. I'm a technology evangelist for CData software, and I am here today to talk to you about the CData connectors. So what are we going to cover in this session? This session is going to talk about connecting to Couchbase from all of the BI, reporting, ETL, and custom applications that you are already using. So we'll spend a little bit of time talking about the problem that exists with data today and what solution CData offers for that problem. We'll talk specifically about how the CData Couchbase connectors work. And then we'll spend most of our time today talking about, or actually demonstrating, using the Couchbase connectors by CData in a variety of platforms. So let's start with the problem. As businesses grow, as enterprise grows, as businesses are developing, the number and the breadth of data sources that they're working with is also growing. And that leads to growing data fragmentation, where data is siloed in different places. So the shift to a SaaS or hybrid or multi-cloud environment model creates new enterprise challenges. So historically, the BI, ETL, and integration tools that businesses work with to do analytics, to migrate data, to build applications, only had to work with a handful of databases and data warehouses. These data storage technologies are universally supported across the vast majority of data-centric tools. So tools like Tableau, tools like Power BI, Qlik, the SaaS platform, MicroStrategy, the list goes on. All of these data-centric platforms and tools were already able to talk to relational databases. Unfortunately, today, the market is very different, where SaaS applications and cloud data stores or other non-relational databases like Couchbase are now the system of record. So you're getting a fractured and inconsistent API integration experience, where before you had kind of this universally supported real-time integration. So this is actually where CData comes in. At CData, we offer standard SQL interfaces for integrating with more than 200 SaaS, NoSQL, and big data sources, and this includes Couchbase. So we provide a SQL interface for things that are not databases. So we build standard-based database drivers, traditionally technologies like ODBC and JDBC, ADO.NET framework, and moving into emerging technologies, so Python. We have native connectors for Power BI, for Tableau, and different environments, Excel. But instead of using these standards to talk to traditional databases, we use these standards to allow you access to any of your data and in real time. So getting the same experience that you do with databases, but with your SaaS data, with your Couchbase data. So you're getting seamless integration with the tools that you're already using, because as far as those tools are concerned, you're actually working with the database. On the back end, however, the data APIs that these CData connectors create are talking to these SaaS applications, the cloud-based data stores like Couchbase. So how exactly do the CData connectors for Couchbase work? The short story is that we translate SQL queries into Nickel or into SQL++. What's great about the Couchbase connectors is, they're developed as Couchbase develops. So thanks to just an integrated partnership with Couchbase, we're able to develop and grow and improve on the CData drivers for Couchbase. So as new features are implemented, new features are introduced, the CData connectors are providing functionality that matches that in step. So you're getting access to all of the features that you're used to working with in Couchbase, but through SQL. And we do that by simply translating SQL into the appropriate language. So if you're connecting to the query service, then we translate SQL queries into NQL. If you are connecting to the analytics service, then we are translating SQL into SQL++. The CData drivers offer live data access. So they're connectors. It's simply a pipe. So we're not storing the data anywhere. We simply translate the query in real time and return the response from Couchbase in a format that tools that are used to working with relational databases are able to consume and use and process. And we work with Couchbase no matter where it is. So whether that's an on-premise Couchbase instance, a cloud-based instance, or you've got some sort of hybrid model, the CData connectors are going to allow connectivity for all of that. So with the CData connectors, each connector has a built-in SQL engine that does two things. So the first is what we call query pushdown or collaborative query processing, where we will look at a complex SQL query that may include operations and functions. It could include joins, aggregations, so summations, averages, different functions, different complex operations in a SQL query. We'll actually parse that query, and we will push as much as we can down to the Couchbase servers. You're not relying on a client reporting machine, a client BI machine, to be able to handle all of the data processing. In those few instances where a complex query is not supported, the CData drivers will request the least amount of data possible and then use optimized data processing to process that response on the client side. So as far as the tools you're using are concerned, as far as your custom applications, your scripts are concerned, the only data that gets exposed to those tools, to those applications, to those scripts is exactly what was asked for. So you're not getting any extraneous information. You're not having to sift through anything that isn't part of the query that you were asking for. So let's take a look, if we can, at something in Couchbase. So for all of the examples that I'll be working through today, we'll be looking at the beer sample data set, and we'll talk a little bit about kind of how data is exposed as we work through these examples. So I just wanted to pull this up to show kind of the NoSQL, the document that, a Couchbase entity, typically looks like. So here we have an array with different addresses. We have a brewery ID, a city, a code, country, a description, and different fields. So this is of type brewery. So we can actually go through and look at, this is of type beer. So there are two different kinds of documents in this bucket, and this becomes important later as we expose data. But each of these fields will be exposed through flattening functionality. So this one is fairly straightforward. There's not, no hierarchical data in here. But if we go back to the brewery, we can see that there's an array of addresses. There's some geo information that's nested. And all of this information will get flattened down. And we use a dot notation that should be familiar to anybody that is used to working with Couchbase. So accuracy will get surfaced as geo.accuracy. Lat will get surfaced as geo.lat, and that pattern kind of continues. There are options for exposing the depth of an array. So you could look in and see only the first 2 entries in an array. You could see the first 10 entries in an array, but that's all configurable within the driver, which we will get to now. So let's pull this off of here. And let's talk about what we're going to demonstrate. So I'm going to connect to live Couchbase data in a couple of popular BI tools, and then actually do a live Python script. I'm no Python expert. It's a very simple script, but it demonstrates the functionality that's available there. And then Unfortunately, I don't have time to demonstrate everything, but other technologies that we have include JDBC, ODBC, Excel, SSIS, PowerShell, and more. One thing that is important to note is that all of the connectors that I'm going to show are all native. So they're specifically designed for those platforms. So we have a specific Tableau connector, a specific Power BI connector, a specific Python connector. So these leverage those tools to the best of their abilities and provide a seamless, low code, no code experience when working in those platforms with Couchbase data. So why don't we start with Tableau? So I'm actually going to end up pulling, so I'm going to pull up Tableau instance. It's already running. I actually have a couple of sheets pre-built, and that's just for the sake of time, just for the sake of the experience, but we'll get to see how everything works here. So let me actually edit the connection. So this is the connection wizard that's going to show up when you connect the first time. The only thing that you need to know is how to authenticate with your Couchbase instance. So we need an address or a name for the server. We need a username and a password, and that's pretty much it. By default, it connects to the query service. You can change that. So if you want to connect to the analytics service, you can set that. What we've actually done in this one is we are going to leverage the infer command that exists within the query service. So we're going to use the default query service to connect to. We're going to use the infer command. And as I showed before, our bucket has two types of documents in it, and the infer command will expose those separate types as two separate tables and allow you to work with them as two different kinds of entities. And then you can actually leverage that, because they're related, to do join information, join operations, which I'll demonstrate. So I'm actually going to cancel this. So it's connected. So we have the beer sample beer table, which is a list of all of the documents in that bucket that had type beer. And then we have the beer sample brewery table, which is going to be the list of all of the documents in the beer sample bucket that had type brewery. And we actually have a join relationship here, and we're going to join based on the brewery ID from the beer sample table and the actual document ID from each brewery. So that's what would be the foreign key if this were a relational database. It just defines that relationship in Couchbase. So when we look at this, we can do all sorts of interesting things. So I'm pulling the country from the brewery, and then I'm counting the name of each beer related to that brewery. And then because Tableau understands location information, it's actually able to create this heat map. So we can see the count essentially of the number of beers by country. And it's doing that because each beer is related to a specific brewery, and each brewery has a country field that defines its location. So we can see here that America is, leading the field here with 4,500 different beers. And, we can kind of go over and mouse over. And then I actually produced a second chart. So this excluded America, and this is counting, again, the number of beers, but I've added a category in our stacked bar chart to show the different categories of beer in each country. So we can see that Belgium has a lot of Belgian and French ales, where the United Kingdom has a lot of British ales. Germany has a lot of German lagers, a lot of German ales, and the list goes on. So Canada seems pretty mixed. This is all information, and what's great is that because we're connecting to live Couchbase data, because it's a live connection, anytime I go in and do something, it is going to create a new query. Tableau is going to create a new query, and that new query gets submitted in real time on the fly as things change. So what we'll do is we'll simply add the United States back in, and when that filter is applied, it actually creates a new query on the back end of Tableau, which gets sent to the Couchbase server. And as you can see, we now have a new United States column that certainly dominates this chart. So we can actually go back in, edit the filter again. We will pull the United States off. And this connection is live. Again, I just want to reiterate that this is a live connection that we're working with here, that this isn't cached data sitting on the Tableau machine. So every time the dashboard is refreshed, every time the dashboard is updated, we're using the server processing power of the Couchbase server to handle all of these requests. So that's what things look like in Tableau. So why don't we take a look and see what things look like in Power BI. So I'm going to pull Power BI up. I'm also going to show what connecting in Power BI looks like. It gets surfaced using a similar interface to an ODBC driver. So you'll actually configure a DSN, and the connectivity is the same as it was in Tableau. You just need to know the credentials, the address of the server, the credentials. If the ports are different, you can configure those. In this case, I'm actually going to use the Analytics Couchbase service. What's great about the Analytics service is it's really good for doing ad hoc querying of data. So if you're not sure what's in there, you kind of want to explore to figure out the kinds of reports or charts that you want to build, then you can do that more on the fly than you can with the query service, where you have to create the indexes and work with more structured data, have a better idea of what's actually in the data in order to be able to query it efficiently. So I'm just going to cancel this because I'm not actually going to reconnect. So in Power BI, it's a similar experience to Tableau. You're going to choose to get data. You're going to look for Couchbase. You'll find CData Couchbase. The difference here is that the connection is configured outside of Power BI versus configured within Tableau. But if needed, you can create multiple DSNs, which would allow you to connect to different Couchbase servers or connect to the same server using different methods. So you could connect using the query service for one connection and the analytics service for another. So we're going to connect. I'm going to go with direct query just to get that live connectivity again. And then, so here we can see, because of the way that analytics works, it actually splits out the two types of buckets for us to begin with. So the data is exposed, and we can see the same kinds of fields as exposed. So if we remember, there was that initial document with the different addresses, the different fields. So here is an example where you can see geo.lat, geo.long, and this goes on. And just for the sake of brevity, I'm actually going to open an existing Power BI workbook just to show kind of this. It's similar functionality. You're still getting charting, reporting, real-time analytics on your data. So we should see all of the fields from each document show up here. We'll see the chart that I built here. So here I'm just charting a count of each category by the category and style. So, styles have different measures. So for a North American ale, which is this light blue, there are different styles. And Power BI nests this nicely. It groups things. So I have groups and subgroups, and it's able to do this. So I'm just counting each of these fields, as they appear from the beer sample beer buckets. And we get similar functionality. So if I wanted to add some filtering, I can get rid of all the blanks. include or not include different things, and we can see that my chart is changing in real time. So if I'm going to get rid of the American style amber or red L's, we should see a giant block disappear. And again, this is live data, so live connectivity to data. So as I make these changes in Power BI, new queries are being generated by Power BI, sent to the Couchbase server. As you can see, it's very responsive, and that is in part to both the performance capacity of Couchbase server and the performance capacity of the CData connectors. So the last thing that I want to show you is connecting in Python. So we'll do this in a terminal. So we'll get rid of all those things. So when we have our terminal, the first thing I'm going to start with is installing, making sure that I have these different packages installed. I've run this before. And then we're going to open a Python terminal. So let me pull this in and kind of center things nicely for us so we can see what's going on. The first thing I want to do is just import. And so anybody that's familiar with Python scripting is going to A, be familiar with this, and B, be like, why is he doing it this way? Again, I'm not the Python expert, but just kind of showing the functionality. The next step is to connect. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to build a chart using the pandas Python package. We connect in Python, and it is the same kind of connectivity that you're used to if you connect to a SQL Server database in Python. So I've installed the Python connector. So I've created. So we'll do a simple query, counting the name. This is an older query. So we're going to do the name of each beer by category. So it's actively querying the data now. We can kind of get a preview of that data. And then we'll just do a simple bar chart. Oh, misnamed that field. Then we can simply show the chart. So I went through, this is similar to the information that we pulled into Power BI. So we can see the different categories of beer and then the number of beers in each category, in a simple chart. So with that done, that kind of rounds out the demo portion. So, as you've seen, you get, native connectivity in the tools that you're already using, connectivity to both the query service and the analytics service using, standard connectivity. In the case of Python, you're using standard SQL to be able to connect. So if you'd like more information on the Couchbase connectors by CData, you can go to cdata.com/drivers/Couchbase. We've also got a virtual booth that you can stop by if you've got questions. And again, I'm Jared Johnson, Technology Evangelist for CData Software. You can see my email address, jaredj@cdata.com, and I would be happy to help get you started, get you connected to the right people on our team to get you working with your Couchbase data wherever you would like. Thanks again.